Welcome to the Hometime Project House. I'm Dean Johnson.
And I'm Peggy Knapp. And this video is all about remodeling your kitchen. Now we're standing in the middle of what's going to be a very attractive kitchen by the end of this tape.
During the tape, we'll be giving you step-by-step instructions that will apply to your kitchen, whether you're doing a complete remodel or just a facelift.
Now let's go over the steps that Dean and I will be using to remodel this kitchen. First comes planning and design. Then the installation of the cabinets, starting with the upper cabinets, then setting the base and pantry cabinets, and then the countertops, followed by the island cabinet.
With the countertops in place, we can cut out for the cooktop and sink. Then tackle the plumbing, connecting our water supply lines and drain under the sink, hooking up the dishwasher and garbage disposal. After that comes the electrical, wiring all the devices.
Hometime is made possible by Chevrolet, who brings you full-size Chevy vans with full-size room and hauling power. Chevy Suburban, no car-type wagon can do as much. Full-size Blazer at home and backcountry or on a city street. Full-size Chevy pickups, full-size Tough for full-size jobs. The heartbeat of America, today's Chevy trucks.
This video is just one in a library of instructional programs designed to assist the viewer in working on a wide range of home improvement projects. And before we begin our program, I want to explain how you can best make use of this educational system. First off, you should watch the tape all the way through to get an idea of the methods, the steps, and the terminology we use. To help familiarize yourself with the terms, we've included a glossary in the project guide. Then you should review the tape again, only this time, check with your project guide to determine the tools and materials appropriate to your project. Then take the project guide to your local building supply dealer or home center. The people there will be able to assist you, answer questions, and direct you to what you need.
With today's tools and materials, remodeling a kitchen is no longer outside the realm of the do-it-yourselfer. And if you work step by step, taking your time, following the guidelines, you'll get the professional-looking results that you want. Not to mention the savings and the satisfaction of doing the work yourself.
The tools Peggy and I will be using for our kitchen remodeling project are a tape measure, a 2-foot and 4-foot level, a hammer, an electric drill, a countersink drill bit, 2 Jorgensen wood clamps, a saber saw, a belt sander, and a scribing compass. Some of your tool needs can be handled at your local equipment rental shop. Depending on the extent of your kitchen remodeling project, a permit may be required. So be sure and check with your local building department to find out what codes and permits apply to your renovation.
Now before we start, we just want to remind you that no matter how simple or extensive your project is, be safety conscious. If you're in a hurry or if you think you can get by without taking the proper safety precautions, you're just asking for problems.
What we recommend is that you work at a comfortable pace, wear proper clothing and protection, and follow the manufacturer's guidelines in using their tools, materials, and equipment.
Planning and design is the first and most important step in the process of remodeling a kitchen. It involves a careful evaluation of the existing kitchen to establish what works and what needs to be changed. The goal being a more efficient, attractive, and workable space that fits the budget and lifestyle of the occupants. Before planning a new kitchen, it's a good idea to look at as many kitchens as you can. Visit friends' kitchens and kitchen showrooms. Also look through books and magazines for design ideas. Then make a floor plan of your existing kitchen. Your floor plan should include the location of the doors and windows, the swing direction of the doors, mark for the lighting and receptacles and the plumbing hookups. Also include the dimensions of the space, both the floor dimensions and the particular wall areas, with all of your measurements converted into inches. With all this accomplished, you're ready to design your new kitchen.
In planning the layout for an efficient kitchen, it's to your advantage to locate the stove, refrigerator, and sink in a triangle. Commonly called the work triangle, this arrangement will save a lot of time and energy in accomplishing kitchen tasks, provided the 3 elements or points of the triangle are fairly equidistant.
Now, to illustrate this work triangle, we've drawn up the 4 most common kitchen floor plans. the U shape, the L shape, the galley, and the kitchen that we'll be working on, which has an island and a peninsula. Working with scale drawings of the cabinets and appliances on graph paper is a good way to visualize your layout. Now let's take a look at where the work triangles ended up. In the U-shaped kitchen, we put the stove here, the sink here, and the refrigerator there. So the triangle looks like that. In the L-shaped kitchen, the triangle looks a little bit different. And here in the galley, again, there's easy access to everything.
Now, many designers feel that for convenience, the proper distance between each of the main kitchen task centers should be between 4 and 6 feet, with a combined total distance between 12 and 22 feet. For our project kitchen, we'll be installing an island cooktop as well as a peninsula of cabinets. The sink is located on the peninsula, giving us a very efficient work triangle. We'll also be providing counter space for each activity center, on both sides of the sink and dishwasher, next to the oven, and next to the refrigerator.
With your floor plan established, you can now begin your kitchen project, ordering the cabinets, gathering your tools, and scheduling the work. And if your project is anywhere near as extensive as ours, you'll also need to plan ahead for convenient meal preparation and storage accommodations for the duration of the work.
Here you can see the hot and cold water lines to the kitchen sink. This is the rough-in stage of plumbing, stubbed out just beyond the floor. As with most fixtures in the house, these supply lines will also have their own stop valves. So if a problem should ever arise, the owners can work out the problem without having to shut off all the water in the house. Being on a peninsula, this sink cannot vent through the roof, so a loop vent will be installed. The height of this cap vent will be adjusted once the sink base cabinet is set. We'll be talking more about kitchen plumbing as we install the fixtures. Now here's Peggy to talk about the electrical.
To supply the new kitchen lighting and appliances, we've added 220-amp circuits to the existing kitchen service. Now the lighting will be a combination of under-cabinet fluorescent lighting and recessed soffit lighting. Now here where the peninsula will be situated, we'll run wires through the back of the cabinets to serve a switch-controlled receptacle for the garbage disposal and a plug-in outlet for the dishwasher. The switch for the garbage disposal is located here on the wall. For the island, we've brought 220 conduit to feed the cooktop. We've also wired for the ceiling hood vent and light. And here at this wall, we have another 220 feed for the cabinet-mounted oven and microwave unit. So with all the preliminary work done and all the old cabinets and appliances removed, we're ready to mark for the location of the studs and the new cabinet dimensions. Now in preparation for the cabinet installation, we've coated all the walls with a primer, which acts as a vapor barrier behind the cabinets.
To determine the location of studs, I begin by making soundings, tapping along the wall with a hammer until I hear a dull thud. Once a stud's located, we can identify it by driving a finishing nail through the drywall till it hits. Then drive again to find the edge. And measure 3/4 of an inch in to determine the center of the stud. From there, I measure over 16 inches and drive another finishing nail to find the next one. The rest of the studs follow the 16-inch on-center increments, so we'll follow the same procedure around the room, marking their locations on the wall.
The next step is to determine the height level of the base cabinets. And to do that, we first want to find the highest point of the floor. So we'll set a 4-foot level on a straight board, sliding it along next to the wall, watching the bubble here. So with our floor, the high point is in the corner and it drops off just a little bit as it goes toward the doorway.
Once the high point on the floor has been located, we can measure up 34.5 inches from that point and make a mark here on the corner on both walls. This indicates the overall height of the base cabinets. The countertop will add another 1.5 inches to this height. Now for the upper cabinets, I'll measure down 30 inches from the soffit along the wall for the height of the wall cabinet. If there wasn't a soffit, then we'd measure up from our 34.5 inch mark a standard 19.5 inches for our upper cabinets. This gives 18 inches for adequate reach and counter space. Should you have a kitchen cabinet located above a stove, then you should allow 30 inches between the cabinet and the cooktop.
It's very important that you make accurate measurements when you're ordering your cabinets, especially when the combined widths of the cabinets will span the entire distance from one wall to the opposite wall.
Before we install all the cabinets, the doors have been removed. This makes it possible for us to secure the cabinets by clamping the face frames together as we place them. I'm taping numbers to the inside of the doors and their corresponding cabinets to make later placement easier. To store the doors, I'm stacking them back to back and face to face. This will keep the hinges from scratching the surface. It's also a good idea to have a container on hand to consolidate all the screws.
Kitchen cabinets come in a wide range of styles, including country, colonial, traditional, and contemporary. And they come in 3 types: wall cabinets, base cabinets, and special use cabinets, like our oven-mounted cabinet here, and these Lazy Susan corner cabinets, both the upper and the base cabinet. Cabinets can be purchased in pre-manufactured units, or you can order them custom-made to your own specifications. A good tip, though, when purchasing pre-finished cabinets is to order some of the same stain that was used on the cabinets for later touch-up and any additional trim or molding.
We'll be installing the wall cabinets in this section first, and then the base cabinets. This will give us a little more room to maneuver and decrease the likelihood of nicking the base cabinets as we work. We'll start here with the corner cabinet. These are typically the most difficult to install, simply because you're dealing with 2 adjoining walls that may not be plumb or square with one another.
With the cabinet positioned to the marks, now we'll check for plumb. And it looks like we're off just a little bit, so we'll shim it out a little bit at the bottom. It's best to place the shim as close to a stud as possible. We purchase these shims in small bundles at our local home center.
Perfect. The placement of this first cabinet is critical. Once we establish this as plumb and square, all the succeeding upper cabinets will be aligned to it with the face frames flush.
To fasten the cabinet to the wall, we're driving screws through the hanging rail and into the studs. I'm using a cordless drill with a special countersink drill bit that both drills the hole and bevels the surface for a flush fit. Then anchor the cabinet with 2.5-inch Phillips head screws. Here again, I'm using another cordless drill, only this one has a Phillips head bit. We're not too concerned with the joint between the cabinet and the soffit. If there are any gaps or deviations, they'll be covered later by a strip of cove molding.
With the adjoining cabinet aligned and flush, I'll use 2 Jorgensen clamps to temporarily hold the 2 cabinets together. Then I'll drill through the 2 face frames and then the hanging rail. C-clamps will also work for this purpose, but when using C-clamps, you'll need to insert soft wood blocks to prevent marring the frame with the jaws of the clamp. With the clamps tight, the next thing I'll do is drill 2 pilot holes for the screws. In drilling, it's critical that the holes are centered in the face frame and bored straight. The screws we'll be using to attach the face frames are narrow shafted screws, and to make the driving easier, we'll coat the surface with paraffin. Okay, now to secure the hanging rail to the wall. A good tip is to drill at the hinge location. This way the screw head will be hidden by the hinge.
From here on, it's just a matter of following the same procedure. Aligning and clamping the face frames, making sure the cabinets are flush with one another, shimming if necessary.
Here's a tip if you need an extra hand. An alternative to supporting the cabinet yourself if someone else fastens it is to use what's called a T-brace. This is basically a 2x4 brace that supports the cabinet in its proper position while it's being fastened. Be sure you make your brace so it's a little longer than the distance from the floor to the bottom of the cabinet for a snug fit. Because this upper cabinet's independent of the others, we want to double check it for plumb and level and shim where necessary before attaching it to the studs.
If you don't shim the cabinets properly before you secure them to the wall, it can cause the face frames to rack or twist, and then the doors won't close properly. Now the next cabinet to go here will be a floor-to-soffit oven cabinet, but we're going to wait to install it until we have all the base cabinets set along this wall, so that we can be sure that everything lines up properly here.
Peggy, who'd have thought we'd carry all these kitchen cabinets in one load?
Well, we did, though, thanks to our new full-size Chevy pickup.
Nobody makes a full-size pickup with a larger base payload capacity. And just look at all the cargo room inside this long wheelbase model. It has an 8-foot bed that lets you stack 4x8 sheets of building material between the wheel houses. Plus, these depressions let you insert supports above the wheel houses for double-deck loading.
With a big load like this, it's nice to know that Chevy's new full-size pickup comes with a rear wheel anti-lock brake system. It's designed to help the truck make a straight stop, whether it's loaded or empty.
This is a totally new truck, built tough for a long life. Underneath is a new full-size frame. Except for the roof, the exterior sheet metal is galvanized steel on both sides. In fact, the anti-corrosion protection on this big new pickup is designed to be the most advanced in Chevy truck history.
Inside, you'll enjoy the comfort of a full-size cab with plenty of room for 3 adults. This whole interior has been designed to help you do a day's work without feeling all beat up.
There's plenty of hard-working fuel-injected power, too. A Vortec V6 is the most powerful standard engine on 1/2 and 3/4 ton models. Depending on the model, you can also get available V8s up to a mighty 454.
And don't forget the detail work on this truck. The hidden drip gutter, for instance. It's almost like a fine piece of carpentry.
Chevy's new full-size pickup is another big reason why they say nothing works like a Chevy truck.
And now it's time for us to do some work of our own.
For our base cabinets, we'll also begin working from the corner out. Our corner cabinet has a Lazy Susan feature for convenient access to stored items. But before we begin installing these cabinets, we'll want to make a cutout in the bottom of this cabinet for our heating register. To do this, we'll start by measuring off the wall to find its position. Then transfer the measurements of the base of the cabinet, knowing that this inside edge is 36 inches from the wall.
Now, before we move the cabinets into position in the corner, we want to secure these 2 adjoining cabinets to the Lazy Susan. The process is the same as for the upper cabinets. First we clamp, making sure the face frames are flush. Then drill through the frame at the hinge locations and secure with 2.5-inch screws, again coated with paraffin. Now, in the final fitting of these base cabinets, our main concern is that these two panels are absolutely plumb with each other because we have an oven cabinet that butts up against them. And that looks good. Now, after we've established this is plumb, then we'll check for level in both directions and shim where necessary. We also want to recheck the front alignment of the face frames using a straight edge. Our floor-to-soffit cabinet came with a front panel which we'll be cutting out to fit the exact dimensions of our combination oven and microwave unit. We'll be attaching it to both the upper and lower cabinets, starting at the bottom.
With the oven cabinet installed, we went to the west wall, securing that adjoining base cabinet using the same procedure as before. Along the east wall of our kitchen, we're going to install one floor-to-soffit utility cabinet, two floor-to-soffit pantry cabinets, two upper cabinets over the pass-through, one above the refrigerator, and two base cabinets underneath the pass-through. Beginning with the utility cabinet, we'll have to shave off the edge in a few spots to create a flush joint with the wall. This is called scribing. We do this by using a compass and setting it to match the widest space that exists between the cabinet and the wall. Then starting at the top, we draw the compass down, transferring the wall's irregularities to the cabinet's face frame. And with a belt sander, remove the waste up to the scribe mark.
With the cabinet properly plumbed and shim, we secure it to the wall studs. Then it's on to the next, matching up the face frame, setting the clamps and driving the screws behind the door hinges. Installing kitchen cabinets takes careful planning, accurate measurements, and patience. But as we said earlier, the key to a smooth installation is getting the first cabinet plumb and square. From then on, it's just a matter of aligning them flush with the first. And after a while, you develop a rhythm. let's take a look at our floor plan to see how we're progressing. So far, we've installed all the wall and base cabinets along the north wall. Then we moved over to the west wall and installed a wall cabinet here, next to the window. Then we moved to the east wall for the pantry cabinets, the wall cabinets above the pass-through and refrigerator, and the two base cabinets. Now we're moving from the corner cabinet under the window, and we're about to make a 45-degree angle for the peninsula.
To make a 45-degree angle for our peninsula cabinets, I'm attaching a pre-mitered filler strip to the frame of this cabinet. Filler strips are used to take up any gaps between cabinets, between a cabinet and an appliance, or between a cabinet and a wall. To achieve a uniform look, it's good to make a filler strip the same width as the style of the cabinet. We'll attach the pre-mitered filler strip to the adjoining cabinet before it's placed in position, drilling through the back side of the strip into the face frame, and securing the strip using 1 5/8 inch bugle head screws. With the filler strip attached, we can position the cabinet and shim for level using the fixed cabinet as a guide. Then clamp, and screw through the face frame into the filler strip. To provide additional support for the cabinet, we'll attach a cleat on the outside of the base with screws. Then we can screw the cleat to the floor, driving the screw through the cleat at an angle.
To place the sink base, first we cut out the bottom to allow for the roughed-out waste vent pipe and the water supply lines. Then dropping it in position over the pipes, we shim to the level of the fixed cabinet, clamped, drilled, and screwed as before.
Okay, a little bit higher. Perfect right there.
Okay, now next to the sink cabinet there'll be a dishwasher. And here again the peninsula will make a 45-degree angle. So we'll put another mitered filler strip here. We're allowing 24.5 inches for the dishwasher. Now that's 24 inches for the actual width, plus 1/4 of an inch on either side to allow room to fit. And that just leaves the end cabinet, which is a bank of drawers to which we'll add a finished end panel.
The final base to be installed is the island cooktop. I want to wait on this, however, until all the countertops are installed to avoid marring its finish. For our kitchen remodel, we're installing a custom-cut countertop with a plastic laminate surface. The plastic is laminated to a particle board backing. Our countertop comes with a square backsplash attached flush to the wall side. You can also purchase countertops with rounded backsplash where the laminate has been heat formed for a continuous surface. In ordering custom-made countertops, it's essential that the measurements are accurate. You may find that people who fabricate the countertops will want to come to your home and measure for themselves, and they will prefer to do this after the base cabinets have been installed.
Plastic laminate is just one of a number of countertops available, including butcher block, synthetic marble, and ceramic tile. Now, our countertops came in 4 mitered sections to accommodate this 90-degree angle and the 45-degree peninsula angles. Now we're going to start by dry fitting and scribing each section, one at a time. Our countertop came with a scribing strip that will shape to the contour of the wall. And we'll scribe this the same way that we did the utility cabinet. We'll set the compass to match the widest space between the backsplash and the wall. Then starting at one end, we draw the compass along, transferring the irregularities of the wall to the laminate. This gives you a guideline for removing the high spots with a belt sander. I'm using a medium grit sandpaper to contour the backsplash. To prevent lifting or chipping the laminate, I hold the belt sander so that the belt is moving into the scribe. Now it's better to take off less than more, so as you sand, work it down gradually, going up to, but not past the pencil line. Well, now we're ready to dry fit this section. Perfect. Now we'll repeat the process for the adjoining countertop.
Yep, looks good.
All right. Well, the next step is to attach these two sections together. Ready?
Yep.
Now, before we attach these two sections, we want to make sure that the face frames line up flush with each other. With that established, I run a bead of white glue along one of the inside edges of the mitered joint. Then we push the two sections together.
The mitered corner comes routed for draw bolts or miter bolts. With the countertop flush, I'll place the bolt in the slot and tighten it with an open-end wrench. The best procedure to use here is to start from the front and work toward the back.
Our kitchen cabinets came with pre-drilled metal corner braces. Your cabinets may have wood braces that'll need to be drilled for the screws.
With the countertop in place, we can attach it to the corner braces. When drilling for the depth of the hole, we don't want to drill through the surface of the countertop. So after establishing a half-inch penetration into the countertop, I wrap masking tape around the drill bit to act as a visible depth gauge.
Once the counter's attached, we can run a bead of silicone caulk along the joint between the backsplash and the wall to seal the back of the cabinets from any water spills.
With our countertops installed, we can now set our island cooktop. In preparation for setting it, we needed to first install the hood vent to the ceiling. We did this by positioning the cooktop base and drew the outline on the floor, then indicated the location of the cooktop itself. We then centered the hood vent directly over the cooktop outline and secured it to the ceiling joist. Now we can set the island base. In planning for an island cabinet, it's best to allot at least 3 feet of floor space around the cabinets to prevent any traffic problems and give adequate clearance for cabinet and appliance doors. We're going to secure the island to the floor with cleats as we did with our peninsula cabinets, only in this case, we'll be anchoring the cleats to the floor first. To do this, we'll first establish the inside dimension of the cabinet. Coming in from our earlier outline, the half-inch width of the cabinet walls and drawing another line. We then screw 2x4 cleats to the floor at the corners of the inside perimeter marks. Then set our cabinet and secure through the floor. With the island base shimmed and leveled, we can now install the countertop, making sure that the overhang is equidistant on all 4 sides.
And with all the countertops installed, now we're ready to cut out for the sink. We're using a self-rimming drop-in sink that will set just inside the face frame and centered between the sidewalls of the sink cabinet. Now, along with the sink, the manufacturer sent step-by-step instructions. So here's how the procedure goes. First, I cut a template and traced the outline onto the counter with a pencil. Then bore a hole with a 1/2-inch drill bit to provide a starting point for the saber saw. Now here's another tip. Put masking tape on the underside of the saber saw to keep from scratching the laminate. Now here's another tip. Fasten a scrap piece of 2x4 to the portion of the countertop that you're cutting out to support the weight of the cutout while you're working around the line.
Cutting out for the cooktop is the same process we use for the sink. Prior to fitting the sink, I'll assemble the faucet units to the basin following the manufacturer's instructions. Inserting the single valve spray unit and its water supply lines through the provided washers, gaskets, and escutcheon, running it through the appropriate mounting hole, and fastening it from beneath with a rubber gasket, brass washer, and mounting nut. And I follow the supplied installation instructions for the drinking water spigot that's installed to the right of the faucet. Doing it now is a lot easier than once the sink's in place. Before I set the sink, I've applied caulk to the edge of the cutout to ensure a good bond once it's centered within the countertop. This white caulk was provided by the sink's manufacturer. Here we want to make sure that the sink's lip is evenly spaced around the cutout and that the front edge of the sink is squared to the front of the countertop. After the sink is in its final position, wipe up the excess caulk, filling the gaps where needed. With the sink in place, we can begin to install the drains, starting with the left drain flange. The first step is to roll out a bead of plumber's putty. Place it on the lip of the flange, and then place the flange in the opening. Now I can thread and tighten the lock nut from beneath, after slipping on the appropriate washers or gaskets. Then wipe up the excess putty from around the exposed rim of the flange above. For the right sink, we'll be installing a garbage disposal. Now the flange is designed to support the unit from below with this mounting ring. This flange is installed the same as the first. The lock nut for the flange in this case is plastic, so take care not to damage it while snugging it up to the sink. The next step is to hang the disposal in the mounting ring and position the drain pipe so it aligns with that of the adjoining sink. Now we can dry fit a sanitary tee to the tailpiece. And measure for the length of pipe to connect the disposal to the drain. Then slip on the nut and washer. Add the pipe section, dry fit the tee, and slide the assembly onto the tailpiece. We'll add a stub section to the bottom of the tee and fit the P-trap assembly last. Because our sink is situated within a peninsula, a standard vent hookup isn't possible. Now, code requires that all drains must have a vent. So for our situation, a loop vent will be required. This is basically a drain and vent assembly that provides a vent above the drain's entrance and carries it up to the highest possible location under the sink's cabinet base and returns to join the existing vent system in the plumbing wall below the floor. Now you can't glue ABS and PVC together, so where our P-trap meets our ABS tee, we're using a compression fitting, so we're able to use either PVC or metal and still comply with code. Now let's go back to our project center for more information on working with plastic pipe.
Now one of the beauties of PVC is it's very easy to cut. All you need to do is take a handsaw and go to it. For a really good square cut, you can use a power miter saw, a cutting jig, or just a good steady eye. You can also use a hacksaw or reciprocating saw. Now I'll clean off the burrs from the cut end with a utility knife, or you can use a half-round file.
Our next step is to permanently cement the pipe joints that we've assembled so far, beginning with the pipe stubs and the Y fitting. Pipe cement will be spread around the outside of the pipe and around the inside of the hub. Before applying it, wipe the ends clean of any grease or debris. Then apply cleaner solvent to the end of the pipe and the inside of the hub. As well as cleaning, the solvent provides a more receptive surface for the cement. After the solvent dries, apply the cement in an even band, running the dauber around the inside of the hub and the end of the pipe. Okay, now to insert the pipe into the fitting. Give it a turn to ensure an even bead of cement all the way around. And make sure it bottoms out in the socket. Any excess cement that oozes from the joint may be wiped away if necessary. There, now for the next joint. Pipe cement sets up fast, so once it's applied, you want to make your joints quickly. The next step is to hook up the water supply lines. We'll be hooking up a cold water line to the sink and a hot water line to both the sink and the dishwasher. The first step is to shut off the water to the house. Then cut off the soldered caps on the stub outs. For this you can use either a tubing cutter or a hacksaw. With this done, we deburr the lines and begin to dry fit the additional copper pieces to bring the shutoff valves to where we want them. Here at the hot water feed on my left, we're putting in a T to feed both the sink and the dishwasher. All right, to see what's involved in soldering copper pipes, let's go back to the project center. Now, copper is a relatively soft metal and therefore easy to cut. A fine-tooth hacksaw will work, but the best tool to use for making a clean, straight cut is a tubing cutter. Here, let me show you how it works. Once I've measured and marked my pipe for the cut, I set the cutting wheel with its blade on the mark. I turn the knob to snug it down, then roll the tube cutter once or twice around the tube. Next, I give the knob a quarter turn and roll it around again. Turn the knob, roll, and continue this until, there, the tube is cut. The trick here is to make sure you measure accurately and cut each piece of copper precisely to length, remembering to deduct the length of the fitting in every case. Now, just as with a plastic pipe, we have to remove all the burrs at the cut end. This can be done with a small round file, or on this tubing cutter, there's a reamer on the back side that is there to serve this purpose. Before soldering, I want to clean the end of the tube of any dirt, grease, or corrosion that can impede the flow of the solder. Once the metal shines, it's ready. But don't touch the polished surface with your fingers. Even skin oils can make it difficult in getting a good solder joint. Now, with the ends clean, I apply some flux. Flux is a paste that helps the solder flow around the joint and prevents oxidation while heating the pipe. Just a little will do the trick. I insert the pipe into the fitting and give it a quarter turn to spread the flux. Now I'll light the torch. Once I have a nice blue flame, I start by pointing it to the thicker metal, which is the fitting, since it will require more heat. Then wash the flame up and down the pipe. A couple things to watch for. Don't make the joint so hot that the flux starts to smoke. The heat of the copper, not the flame, should be melting the solder. And keep the flame away from the solder when you apply it. That sealed up most of the joint. We just need a little more here. As you can see, the solder is drawn into the fitting. It takes a while to get the knack and the timing, so you may want to practice on some scrap before you do a joint. And take your time and work carefully. Keep the flame away from you and your clothing as you solder, and let the copper pipe completely cool before touching it. Remember, several inches of pipe are very hot, not just a soldered joint. And make sure all the joints are properly soldered before turning on the water. Any leaky joints will have to be resoldered. With the soldering completed, we can assemble the flexible copper tubing to feed the faucet assembly. First locating the shutoff, then measuring, cutting, and installing the tube for the hot water feed. We repeat the process for the cold water supply. The final compression fitting feeds the spray assembly. Now to connect the dishwasher. To install the dishwasher, I'll be making 3 connections: the electrical, the drain, and the hot water supply. I'll begin with the hot water supply by hooking up this L-shaped fitting. To seal the fitting, I've wrapped it with plumber's tape and tighten it so that it points toward the rear of the unit. I can now push the washer into place and mark the holes to feed the electric and drain. Then drill through the side panels for access to the sink base. Now here's the tip. Hook up the flexible copper water supply with the washer out in front of the cabinet. Then if maintenance is required, the unit can be pulled out without disconnecting the water supply. The drain hose is connected next, slipping the hose over the outlet and securing with a hose clamp. Now we can run the 3 lines through the side panels and into the sink base. push a unit into place, and make the final hookups. We've completed the electric hookup by running the cable across the back of the base and into a 2-gang box for the disposal and washer plug-ins. Here on the wall, we've mounted a metal junction box that contains a 240-volt feeder from our panel that will power our combination oven microwave as well as our island cooktop. The first step is checking to make sure the breaker is turned off at the panel and double checking with a voltage tester here at the box. Now we can run the flexible metal conduit into the connector and tighten. We make the connections one at a time, starting with the ground, lining up the ends evenly and screwing on the wire nut tightly. Now for the hot leads, the process is the same, making sure all exposed wire is completely covered by the wire nut. We can now place the wires back in the box and add the metal cover plate. Okay, now all that's left is to slide in the unit. The final step, once the oven's in position, is to fasten it to the cabinet's face frame. The 240-volt hookup for the cooktop is much the same as that for the oven. Our power enters the cooktop base from below, running within the flexible metal conduit to a metal junction box. We hooked up the ground and hot leads the same as we did with the oven, covered the box with the plate, and set the cooktop in place. That wraps up our kitchens program. We hope this video will make your next kitchen remodeling project a little more enjoyable. As with most things, there are variables with every project. Problems particular to your house we weren't able to cover in our video presentation.
For more information on the subject of kitchens, check the bibliography in the back of your companion project guide. And look to our other tapes for more information on plumbing, wiring, drywall, and finished carpentry. I'm Peggy Knapp.
And I'm Dean Johnson. So long.
Hometime is made possible by Chevrolet, who brings you Chevy Suburban, America's superwagon, Chevy Astro, the van that can, S10 Blazer, America's most popular sport utility vehicle, full-size Chevy pickups, full-size tough for full-size jobs. The heartbeat of America, today's Chevy trucks.